Now I'd like to introduce our instructor this evening, Derek Haynes. His passion for botany is readily seen by anyone who meets him. He's known as the crazy botanist. He's found an allure for plants at a young age, and he gives back to his community by volunteering with local community gardens and creating and maintaining relationships, especially within the community of Black plant enthusiasts. He is a graduate of North Carolina State University. He uses his humor, creativity, and background to present botanical tenets on Instagram. You can reach him at The Chocolate Botanist, and Facebook, The Crazy Botanist. And he believes that plants can help foster community and communication. So Derek, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, I will definitely take it. I am so grateful to be here. Thank you all for joining and being here. Again, to reiterate what Joanna said, due to inclement weather, if you do have to take a break, if you have to leave, if your power goes out or anything like that, take care of your safety first. This information will be here through the link that she gives out, and I am all over social media. So again, feel free to hit me up, but let's keep you safe so that way we can continue to grow together after all of this passes, okay? So we are going to begin the wondrous presentation. It's coming up on the screen here, and we're going to be demystifying botany. It's a lovely subject, if I do say so myself, and I did. And again, I am Derek, the crazy botanist. So I will be your guide into this botanical world today. You may be a new plant enthusiast or a intermediate or experienced plant enthusiast, but I think we can still all stand to learn something new from the botanical world. So we're going to go to the next slide. So our presentation overview, we're going to speak about botany. We're going to make it plain. What's in a name, we're going to get physical, and that botanical spotlight is actually supposed to be removed, but Derek didn't do so. So that's actually going to be replaced with some technology pieces that we can go into, technology and books we can go into in order to deal with plants. I often get a lot of questions about how to ID stuff, but we'll talk more about that as we go into it. Next slide, please. So when we talk about demystifying botany, there's a lot of things there. Now, in the course of this hour and a half that we're going to be here together, you and I, me and you, I am not going to be able to take my several years of knowledge that I've gotten from NC State and working in the career fields and reading up and YouTube and all that stuff and just jot it to your mind. I wish I could. I really do. Howsoever, we'll be able to get you a feel. Now, to a general plant enthusiast, when I talk botanical names, most people are often quoting about how I'm using Latin or these $10 words, as we say in the South. And it can confuse the people. And through social media, by being a scientific communicator, I have worked to really detangle this mess of vines that is science, that is the botany. And though my passion is truly ethnobotany, which goes into medicinal botany and stuff like that, I feel like we could still come together, cut all through this dense leaves and prune up something really nice. So again, we're going to be doing that. As we go to the next slide, we're thinking over a quote. This quote will help us to set some of our mindset, some of our intentions for this class. So the quote is from Percy Levon Julian, a Black botanist. I don't think that you can possibly embrace the kind of joy which one who has worked with plants and plant structures, how wonderful that plant laboratory seems. Plants are multifaceted. Plants are amazing, and botany is such a dense subject, growing every day. New information, terms are changing, things are shifting, just like in general, science evolves and botany evolves too. So when we are, again, demystifying botany, we are trying to get a good foundation growing. Just like when you're making a raised bed, you get your good raised bed going, you amend it properly. So in that way, as you're growing your plants as you are preparing your harvest, you can get a harvest that can shift with the times. So, no, you're good, good. So, we're going to talk about the house rules. So, here's a few things to keep in mind. I know that some of you all will have your burning questions. You have things that you have been probably thinking about since you signed up for this course. And you are just waiting and you're sitting there in anticipation. There is no such thing as a stupid question. Okay. If you have a question, don't let yourself psych yourself out. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Now, while I will say throughout this presentation, hey, if you have any questions, let me know. Again, if anxiety got you down or you just don't want to talk, you can hit your questions up in the chat. Now, here's the big ticker. I may miss your question, okay? I may originally not see it in the chat. Sometimes things are flying by real quick. I'm in the middle of a concept. I'm trying to explain something, make sure it makes sense, and I may miss your question. It is not intentional. I will get to it as I can, okay? So please note that. And then if I don't get to it again, at the end, we'll be able to talk and experience each other in that way, learning together. Participate on mute, please. So this all works better when we all are muted. Leaving your cameras on, nah, I'm not concerned with that. But muting allows this platform, allows us not to distract each other on this platform. In addition to, there's going to be some participation I'm going to ask you all to do, and it's better to do it on mute. And finally, this is the most easiest one, right? We're going to learn and have fun. So we are going to go together. Keep these in mind, okay? No stupid questions. I may miss your question, okay? But if I do, it's not intentional. I will get to it. Participate as you can on mute, okay? Because we have to work together, right? And then we have to learn and have fun. So if you agree to those things, please type I agree in the comments as we go to the next slide. That's right, people. I already got you working already. Look at that. So we're going to talk about botany, okay? Botany. That's right. I see the agrees coming. I'm loving this. Let's go to the next slide. So what is botany? So when I first got into plants in a scientific way, I didn't know what botany was. And when I run into people now as a whole botanist, there's a lot of people who just don't understand what it is. So let's just break it down. Botany is a scientific study of plants. It is the branch of biology, pun intended, that serves to say, this is our explanation of plants and fungi, fungi, lichen, all of those different things. Mycology is a separate branch, but generally they're kind of melded together just because reasons. But it is, in short, a scientific study of plants. We are looking at that. Now, it is not horticulture or agriculture. I did take some classes that were horticultural in nature. I took some ecology classes, but those are related. They are next door neighbors. That's the term I should use, next door neighbors. They are right beside each other. They live in the same neighborhood. They go and they drink coffee with each other sometimes. They have tea and all of that jazz. They watch the news and everything else, but they are not the same person. The aliases that plant biology is known as is plant biology, botany, plant science. An old term that's rarely used now is phytology. I didn't write that one down, but there's different terms for that. So let's go into this a little deeper on the next slide. So this beautiful, if I say so myself, Venn diagram kind of shows us what the big three of plants are. They are related. Again, they are, similar on that 23andMe or Ancestry.com schema. So plants unite them all. Botany is the scientific study of plants. So in relation to agriculture, you have history of these plants, us breeding them for crops and us getting all of these different things together. The ethnobotany behind using different things for fabrics or other uses that we as people have benefited, we as humans have benefited from in relation to this plant world, while agriculture, again, is the production of plants for food and other products. Can I become an agriculturalist? Yes, I know enough about plants and science to figure it out. Can agriculturalists become a botanist? Well, yeah, they know enough about the plant world to be able to get the science, right? But there's still hurdling blocks that both of us as an agriculturalist or a botanist would have to get in order to truly be an expert, which I hate using the term expert, but we're going to use it here today. Okay. Between botany and horticulture, you have science, right? So they are both a vestige of science, okay, as it's circled here on the map. And I'm loving this help. This is great. I need y'all to help me more often. And this horticulture, again, is the science and art of plants. So as a horticulturalist, you're putting the plants up in an artistic way, whether it's landscape design or detailing how to grow these different cultivars, these different types of plants that look beautiful, that look amazing, that are ornamental in nature, and how to really profit off of those, or again, to use them in your space. That still takes a science because you still have to know, does this plant like sun or shade? Does this plant flower at this time? Can it handle this? Can it handle that? What does this plant need to grow? Cloning all of these cultivars. That again is where horticulture and botany are working hand in hand. And then on the horticultural and the agricultural side, you have growth and production. Because again, if I grow a philodendron that is deep purple and blue, and it's able to be so good in the leaves and it looks amazing and it's big leafed and gorgeous and everybody wants it, I need to know how to produce it in large scale. And that's again where it's a relation between agriculture and horticulture, because I can then pull from both knowledges of greenhouse or crop rotations or anything of this nature to grow my plants. So again, they are related, okay? And I'm trying not to stress this enough, but I run into this a lot. And it's a thing that happens. A lot of people come to me and they ask me about fixing their yards up. I do it, I can do it. Howsoever, I am not a horticulturalist. I just like to see my plants. I'm in it for the plants, plants over people. So any questions as we begin? Again, remember, you can put them in the comments or you can unmute yourself. Okay. They say it usually takes 10 seconds for a question to form. It's been around 10 seconds. Kind of counted a little in my head. So we're going to go to the next slide. What's in a name? Names are so important. Words are so important. And in this plant world, we use a lot of words. Now, terms are important too, but the name of these plants is important. My name is Derek, and that is who I am. And I have a nickname named, I'm called Scooter by my family and close friends who've known me for years. I'm back in those eras where, people knew me by that name. So those names are special to me. Next slide, please. So when we're thinking of these names of these plants, we're thinking of binomial nomenclature. Again, my name is Derek Haynes. That is who I am. I also go by the Crazy Botanist. People know me a lot by that. So I have a naming system. You have a naming system. These plants and the animals, even though animals aren't as cool, these plants and the animals have a naming system. So it's a two name system, the scientific name. It has the generic name, that is the name of its genus. So not generic like Frosted Flakes versus Corn Flakes. We're not talking that, but a generic name as in a philodendron. Ooh, that's not one I know by heart. As in it's amazing. I said that and then all the names flew away from my head. As in a honeysuckle is the ones that we usually see that are the invasives are Lonicera japonica. There we go. I got it. I know science. So when we think of that again, we have the generic name, which is the genus. That is a group of organisms that are kind of under this gigantic umbrella. And then the specific species that zooms us in to one plant. So again, in my example here, I have Capsicum annuum. Capsicum annuum is a bell pepper. okay, or a lot of different types of peppers. Okay, these names are generally in Latin or Latinized. So for example, Helianthus, we're going to go through some of these names and what they mean. And this is governed by the International Code of Nomenclature for Algae, Fungi, and Plants. They come together, I imagine, and they say, hey, this is what this organism's name is, and that organism's name is, and they keep this on record so that way no two organisms have the same name. Every organism, or I should say every species has its own unique name. I am the only Derek Arison Haynes, right? But across time, well, I could even say, because my middle name is from my grandfather, it's a family name. So I am the only Derek Arison Haynes that has ever existed at this point. So that is my naming system, even though it's 3 names. That is my naming system. So in the plant world, as if I was a species, there would not be another Derek Arison Haynes unless it was still one of my, family members, one of those of me in the same species. This naming system is not often favored by plant enthusiasts and even some botanists because these words can be a little trippy. So we usually prefer common names, okay? These binomial nomenclature is something that can help us in all languages be able to talk and say this name because this name, Helianthus, is the same in all language, but we just may pronounce it different. But when we go to the next slide, we can see that we have common names. These common names are different, but it's usually a little easier, right? So multiple plants can have the same common name. All of us can call these plants different common names. And the thing about a common name is often something just like the binomial nomenclature that was made up. It's something that we chose for whatever reason, whether it was to describe a characteristic of the plant or to say what it meant to us. However, again, unlike the binomial nomenclature, these common names are not governed by an organizational body. So an example are here in the South, yams, sweet potatoes, we call them both yams, right? We say you want some yams, you have the little marshmallow fluff over it, it's delicious. You got a little sweet potato stuff. I haven't eaten yet, so I'm really focusing on what I'm gonna eat when I get done here. But it's so delicious in the glaze and it's amazing, right? But those are sweet potatoes. When I actually had yams as I got older, I was like, oh my God, this is nothing like what I want. The other thing is, again, these names are not regulated. So some of the names that are now out of use, a lot of them are offensive. So there's one plant, I will not say the original name, that we now call in the plant enthusiast world, wandering dude, or some people in Philly and New York say wandering John, JWN. Some people say wandering dudette. There's a lot of different things, but that original name is offensive. Echinacea, one of our most beloved plants, has a offensive common name that is now out of use. That was derogatory to Black people. Wandering dude was derogatory rather to the Jewish community due to apocryphal text about Jesus casting a Jewish person out to wander for the rest of their days. These common names, we should research, in my opinion. So Dieffenbachia, I would show y'all my Dieffenbachia, but it's looking like the struggle. So we're not going to look at it. But that plant is called dumb cane. That is an offensive name. A lot of people don't know. It's put on tags. We say it. We call it dumb cane. But the plant was called dumb cane because the plant itself has oxalates, calcium oxalates. Boom, there we go. In the plant, and those chemicals, those compounds, when ingested, can actually cause swelling and can make you appear dumb, the old term meaning unable to speak or mute. And it was used as a torture mechanism on runaway slaves. So you called it dumb cane because it was the cane that was supposed to make folks who experienced it dumb. These crystals are painful. So you're not just muted, but you're going through pain as well. So Should you use common names or scientific names? Use whatever you're comfortable with, even with these offensive names. Once you know better, I suggest doing better. Howsoever, again, when the big box stores and the big plant companies are still using those names on tags and labels, it's kind of hard to not use it, because if you say Dieffenbachia, some people may not know. Some plants only have one common name. So it's kind of like, how else can you describe it? So I seen that we had a quick question, and it was about names. So when do botanical names change, whole genre that may be reclassified? So the way that plants and animals used to be classified was based on physiology, based on their, hold on one second, please. Based on their shape or their form. And if plants looked alike, or if animals looked alike, they looked vaguely similar, then we thought they were related, because frankly, that was the best thing we had. So plants that we now know are not related, we know due to DNA testing. And as they are doing these DNA analyses on these different plants, things are reclassified. People have to come together. It's not just a simple, snap your fingers and it's reclassified. It's a whole bunch of work. It feels that way to us in the botanical community, because you'll just be sitting around. I don't know how y'all do it, but I sit around with my plant nerd friends, those who are botanists, horticulturalists, florists, Bree author, and several other people, and we'll just sit around sometimes, and be like, "Hey, you heard they renamed this one to this one?" And it's like, "Oh my God!" Or we're on Zoom, and it's like, "Hey, you heard that they renamed this one to this one?" And it's like, "Oh, what?" And people are disgusted and angry and hurt because we got to know those names. But DNA doesn't lie, so it helps to reclassify genre or to reclassify an organism. So even when you're looking up different organisms over time, you can see, like on Wikipedia, I know this is something, a website people don't like, but you can see on Wikipedia even where different plants were formerly classified as this genus or that genus or this species, and it's not anymore. So if you were someone who went to school and got your botanical degree in the 70s or 80s and a genre has changed since then, you'll still be able to backtrack and look it up. Next slide, please. I hope I answered your question, by the way. So here's where we're going to have fun. Here's where we're going to have fun. Before we have fun, I got Katrina. He has a question. Is there a line between classifying a plant as a new species and a new variation? Yes. So new species is, this is a wholly new organism. And this wholly new organism is related to the other organisms in the genus. However, it is new versus it being a variation, or again, a cultivar. So for example, there are many variations or cultivars of tomatoes. We have the big boys, the better boys, the Paul Robeson tomatoes, the purple, the Cherokee purples, Cherokee chocolates, right? There's a lot of different varieties of tomato. They are all the same species. They're just a different variation. Something was bred for this or bred for that. Some genetic quirk made it look a little different, but it's still your tomato. Corns, there's so many different varieties of corn, but they're all still some Zea mays species. So it's all about that DNA and whether I'm just showing off different things already within my DNA, or if my DNA is wholly different entirely or slightly different. So my DNA is slightly different. I am a new species. If my DNA is just showing off different things that were already in my code that are just now coming out due to, again, some quirk that is now being a little bit more expressed, some new epigenetic thing where if I take care of it this way, I can get these colors or these things. Epigenetics meaning the environment can affect how a plant or an organism expresses its genetics. That is where the line is. I don't want to go too deep into a bunch of genetic stuff because frankly, I hate genetics. Howsoever, I hope that answers your question. We're going to go into a call and response. We're going to be playing a game. Derek is going to fill up his tea real quick because I'm going to participate. So if you have your water, your tea, I didn't tell you to bring any, but you should. Go ahead and wet your whistle. And we're going to be playing a little game. So when we are thinking about a common name or a an actual binomial nomenclature, the actual Latin name, it can trip us up, okay? I know I wasn't taught Latin in school. It's not something that is commonly learned these days. A lot of people aren't going around speaking Latin. I frankly thought growing up that Pig Latin would be more in my repertoire than it is now, based on how I used to see it on TV as a child of the 90s. Howsoever, language and words can sometimes trip us up, and that is okay. I am a whole botanist, and I get these words wrong. And I just say after it, I'm Southern. It's okay. You can use that now too. You are Southern, whether you've been here for a long time or a short time. You Southern, things get messed up. So we're going to work together and we're going to build some confidence and we're going to get accustomed to saying some words and some terms in this botanical world that we are not quite used to. So here's what I want you to do. You, person watching me, you are going to make sure you're still on mute, right? And you're going to repeat after me. I'm going to say a word, you're going to say it back, okay? Now, remember, unless you live with somebody, and even then, right, you live with them. You are the only person that can hear you. So a lot of us get flustered because we're like, somebody says I said this wrong or said that wrong. And the anxiety can come in and again, creep in and get us. However, I believe science and plants are for everybody. And these words, these terms, these phrases, I think we should just all use. I had a professor at State, Dennis Warner, and he basically would say when it was kind of like, how do you pronounce, like, do you say verbena or this species or bonariensis or bonariensis? How do you do your inflection? He's like, just say it. I mean, just say it loud and proud, even if you're wrong, like just go. So loud and proud, wrong and strong, let's say it and let's do what we can. All right, we're gonna go to the next slide. So this one is easy. A lot of us have seen this in our grandmother's yards or houses rather. A lot of us may have had this plant. This is a plant that we're going to practice together. Now, I personally say pothos. However, as you can see on the next slide, there are some people in this world who say pathos instead of me on the bottom saying pothos. Now, again, pathos, pothos, and we know what this plant is. This is a common name that it goes through a little mispronunciation, jinga, as it were. Now, again, that can still happen with common names. However, don't allow yourself to beat yourself up and don't let anybody else do it. We're going to go to the next slide. So we're going to repeat after each other. The first word is salvia. So I say salvia, and then you say salvia. Let me switch and see if I can see this camera. Oh, I can't. And so, oops, it's okay. We're going to leave the camera up. We're going to leave the slide up. So salvia, salvia. I can see some people saying it. Beautiful. Now, this next one is a little bit of a doozy, but we can get through it together. Rosmarinus. Rosmarinus is perfect. You're fine. Rosmarinus. Salvia rosmarinus. This plant used to be Rosmarinus officinalis, I believe, and this is rosemary. This plant was recently reclassified as a salvia because old DNA and all that stuff. Again, I have respect for those people doing the work to reclassify and to help us really know where these organisms lie on the whole phylogenetic family tree of this world. However, I loved Rosmarinus officinalis. Like it just said it. It started with it was perfect. It was perfect the way it is. And then they say it's a salvia. Now, granted, again, I was disgusted. Some of our planting friends were disgusted. You don't have to be. It's all right. We're going to go to the next slide. To another reclassified plant. I was frankly aggravated with this one. That's why I even put it on the bottom. This was formerly Sansevieria. So this plant, I will struggle saying this one because I'd had, until I really looked it up for this class, I didn't realize two groups of people were pronouncing this differently. So I'd say Dracaena. Some people say Dracena. Now, whether you say Dracaena and then you say Dracaena, or Dracaena, and then you say Dracaena. Awesome. You're going to know what you're talking. Most people are going to know what you're talking about, except for those who don't realize that it's not a Sansevieria anymore. These are snake plants. You go to the next slide for me, please. And again, you can see that pronunciation. Now, again, you're like, Derek, how do you get these pronunciations? Some of it I'll just try to do phonetically. Some of it I will do by, like, you can Google, like, hey, how is this pronounced? How is this genus or this word pronounced? And then Google will play it for you and you can listen to it. I went and I think Google said Dracaena, okay? But I was like, I've heard other people say it this way. I didn't make this up. So then I scrolled through YouTube videos for about 20 minutes in disgust as I saw some of my YouTube favorites, all of them pronouncing this differently. Now, again, it happens. It's a part of this word game. This is Latin. The people who spoke this language and really had this inflection, I don't think they're really here at this point. So pronounce it as you can, as you see fit. If you pronounce this word a third way other than me, that is okay too, right? Because those common names can help us to get a little further out. And even if there's nothing else, we can always write it out. And as long as our spelling is good, we'll be good too. Next slide, please. I missed my mouth. There we go. There we go. Have a hole in my mouth, party people. So this one, I say Helianthus. You say Helianthus. Helianthus. And then we have tuberosa. So these Latin words also have a meaning, right? They help us to know what this plant is. Now, this is a Jerusalem artichoke, one of my favorite sunflowers. I learned about it about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, about 3 or 4 years ago. Actually, longer than that. And was taking class at State, learned about this beautiful thing and how we could actually eat the tubers, and it's a native sunflower. It is an amazing thing to grow, and I love it because its name tells me what it is. Helianthus is the genus of sunflower, and tuberosa literally means it has a tuber. Next slide, please. We'll see that. So when we think of Helianthus, we think of a sunflower because that word Helianthus comes from a compound word, 2 words put together, compound phrase, helios meaning sun, anthos meaning flower. So we get Helianthus. And then tuberosa, swollen roots, or it has a tuber. This is just lovely to me because, again, especially for test, it was easy to remember, like, this is this Helianthus. It's not the other ones that have the other names that I've now long forgotten, but this one is easy. It is so beautiful to be able to look these terms up and to see what they mean or their etymology, their origins, and to discover what phrases or characteristics or situation or person was this plant named for. We're going to see this in this next plant. We're going to see another term. So the next slide, please. Capsicum annuum, okay? This is a variety of a bell pepper, striped Holland bell pepper. I always use this picture to remind myself to buy seed, so that way I too can grow striped bell pepper. So Capsicum annuum, okay? And this is named for the shape of the bell peppers. So on the next slide, we have potentially the shape, I should say, because the origin is unknown. So capsa, meaning box, or the Greek capto, meaning to gulp, is the potential name of origin of capsicum. They don't really know. Some people are saying one, some people are saying another. It's kind of a fight. It's not really like East Coast, West Coast beef, but it's kind of the same in my mind. That's how I imagine it. I don't know how you imagine it, but that's what I imagine. One rap group is like capsa for box. One rap group is like capto for gulp, but it's okay. There's no need to have Tupac and Biggie happen. We can go ahead and join together with some dope EDM. So annuum. Annuum is meaning yearly or annually. So that's literally telling you that this is an annual plant. I have seen people grow these gorgeous, just massive pepper trees, but that is through a lot of work where they keep them throughout the years. Next slide, please. Okay, before we get into our next topic, and I feel like I'm kind of sliding through this fast. Do we have any questions? I have not seen any pop up on the chat, but I am here for your questions. We've been talking about naming conventions and how these plants, their names mean something and their words mean something. Do we have any questions? Ta-da. Okay. If you still have a question and you're typing it up, continue to do so, and we will move forward. We're going to get physical, everybody. Okay. So it's not just a song, it's an action, but we're not going to actually do any actions. It's just, I love the song. Next slide, please. I'm a child of the 90s, but I appreciate the 80s and 70s. So identifying plants, this is a big thing. Now, let me tell you something. I want you all to really hear the sound of my voice. If you have a botanical person in your life who is like, hey, I know plants, the plants speak to me and I speak to them, and you are like, hey, I'm so glad I found you, for I have this slew of plant questions to ask. Make sure when you say, hey, what is this plant? Don't show them a Sasquatch-esque picture of some random plant off in the woods, badly focused. You got your thumb over the lens. It's no leaves. It's just a picture of a root. I've gotten so many crazy pictures, and people are like, what is this? And I'm like, you didn't even focus your camera. There's 5 plants in the picture. Which one are you talking about? The one with this. They all have this. What are you asking me? So make sure you're specific and you're taking high quality pictures. Like if someone's giving birth, someone's having a graduation or a wedding, the way you would like those pictures to be high quality. When we're taking selfies, especially now, we have all these magical devices. I was looking for mine, but it's here in front of me. These magical devices that take such excellent pictures, right? Make sure you're taking a phenomenal picture and take multiple pictures. Now, don't take 40 pictures of the same angle, but take pictures of the stems and the leaves and the bark and the flowers if there are any fruit. So that way, if you are asking a person, they will be able to help you and they won't talk about you like I do some of my friends. So, tons of terms. There are a plethora of words that you would need to become accustomed to in order to really be able to identify a plant. I personally despise identifying plants. I can do it, it can take me some time, but it can be overwhelming from personal experience. I had to do this on the fly. I would have to do this for classes, but you're doing this for fun. So do not let it overwhelm you. Don't let it overtake you. Okay. The vocabulary, different words, whether it's hirsute or glaberus or velveteen, any of those words. Again, we all have these magical devices. I just looked for it again. It's still in front of me. These magical devices that are in front of us that have us access to the world. So you can Google and define or use dictionary.com to define these terms, right? And when you are going to identify plants, there's a lot of different books and guides you can speak of, you can reference. I'm only going to reference these 2 that I am familiar with, which is Flora of the South and Mid-Atlantic States by Alan Weekly. I believe we use that in some of my classes, and then the Manual of the Vascular Flora of the Carolinas by Radford. We also called it Radford. And these other authors. They're important, but I don't feel like reading their names. We have these grand people here who took the time to be able to describe what these plants are. Now, when you are going through a guide or a key, again, it can be overwhelming, but I believe I have one pictured in here, so we'll hopefully be able to work through that and go from there. Now, again, some of us may be like, I don't really know. I don't really want to go through all this work. I just want it quicker, right? There's a lot of different options you can use. Google can be your best friend sometimes. So you can use the Google image search, I've heard, to basically look these plants up, take a picture of it, Google image search and see what it is. iNaturalist and Picture This are kind of similar concepts where you take a picture of a plant and it identifies it for you. It says, hey, this may be this species of plant or animal or fungi or algae or lichen. It's basically living organisms. It will name it out for you. And iNaturalist in particular, I'm fond of. They are not sponsoring me in any way. But if y'all know anybody who could help me get sponsored by them, please contact me after this. They geotag every picture if you allow it. So what happens is if I'm in your community and I see you have an organism that may need help being more specified to a species or whatever, I can then help to add to your identification and confirm or refute what that plant is or that animal. Someone just said they use Seek This. That is great. Picture This is grand. There's a couple of other ones you pay for. iNaturalist and Picture This, I believe, are free. And that, lastly, you have social media groups. There are so many social media groups for finding fungi while foraging different plants, finding different house plants that can help you to identify your different plants, especially when you're going into cultivars of varieties of like philodendrons or elephant ears, colocasias or alocasias, or any other type of plant that may be a little bit more specified. So an example, when I have someone who comes to me and they're like, hey, Derek, what is this plant? Whoops, there we go. Nope, it's then boom, here we go. What is this plant? I can be like, okay, well, I know it's a Dracaena because, you know, people decided to ruin my life and change it from Sansevieria to Dracaena. But I can ask people I know in my friends group to be able to help me with that. Someone mentioned Raleigh plant people. They should recognize me for there. I am also in that group. I'm also in the Bull City plant groups. There's Black plant groups. There's all sorts of plant groups, again, especially in this area for finding what a thing is or finding where to get certain plants from if you're looking for that thing. So next slide, please. So one way we identify plants is through leaf shape. Some of it was a little easy, but some of it can get a little bit obtuse to me. So linear, oblong, lanceolate leaves, you have to look at so many different features of these plants. And this is just a guide of a couple of different features. It doesn't even talk about palmates, which look like the palm of your hand. My hands are looking a little strange right now because of the background, but it doesn't talk about these other different shapes or leaflets, right? Having multiple little leaves coming off of the plants. So this is just a drop in the bucket of identifying a plant and figuring out what it is. Now, it's like a scavenger hunt, right? But I don't like scavenger hunts. I like video games. So next slide. We're still doing scavenger hunts. I forgot this slide was here. So even more on leaf attachment. How does this leaf attach to the petiole, to the stem, right? Some of us are looking at this and you're like, this is like Japanese to me, or writing in code and binary or botany. It's like botany to me. I don't understand this at all. However, it's beautiful that all of these different situations that a plant can experience as far as its physiology, its color, where is it growing at, what type of environment it's in, if it's in a bog or an ecotone, what time of year is it? Does it have any leaves? Does it have any flowers? Do you see this? Do you see any leaf scars? All of these different things can come in to help you really narrow down more specifically into what a plant is. The apps are beautiful, next slide, but they cannot really help you get as specified as these books are. So this is a copy of one of the keys, and hopefully you have it on a computer where you can get big. I think you can zoom in on Zoom. You can kind of tap it yourself, like on your own screen and zoom in. But the manual of the vascular flora of the Carolinas, again, of Radford. This is an image with a bunch of words, but it basically will describe a certain genus and will say, hey, these are the species under it. And you're keying, you're locating, like almost like a GPS. But back in the day when we would use like MapQuest, you're locating how to get to this plant. So you go down all these different numbers, and It's actually it's more like a choose your own adventure book. You're going down all of these different numbers and you're choosing your own adventure. What do the leaves look like? What do the stems look like? Do you see anything in the roots? Is there a hollow shell on the end of the roots? Like there's all of these different things you can look at, and you'll finally get to your right answer, pending that you got it there. Now sometimes the keys may throw you off because you skipped a number. Again, it's a bunch of words. You're going down point by point trying to say, okay, yay, nay, maybe, whatever. But you can generally backtrack through, okay, this is where I messed up at because the leaves are actually alternately on the stems and not opposite on the stems. Okay, go back through and figure it out. It's this species, everybody. Woo, I got it. So it can be a little easy or a little more direct, I should say. Next slide, please. But technology is where I reign supreme. Again, it is not as explicit as the books are. The technology helps me to get into the ballpark, which is what I'm generally looking for. I do not currently wildcraft um, any, or I should say, forage as heavily as some of my peers. So those who do heavily forage, or if you are planning on heavily foraging, you do need to make sure that you are making sure that you know that you know what these plants, or especially fungi, are. So there is a book actually for fungi called Boop, Mushrooms Demystified. And this book was suggested to me by one of my professors, Dr. Larry Grand. And I think that helps it to be seen more. And it's by David Aurora. So Mushrooms Demystified is a thick tome, but it has different images and identification fact features of mushrooms. So what do the gills look like? What does the stipe or the stem look like? And you can even key yourself to different species in this way. Because again, mushrooms can be deadly. Different plants can be deadly. The apps again help me to get within the ballpark when I'm taking my pictures for my statuses or my posts or whatever. And they at least help me to know this is this before going to like my local cooperative extension agents or friends again that I have who will know specifically what these species are by asking me questions that they know that help them to identify different things. So again, picture this, you can kind of see a capturing of the image of the app rather in the image above. Again, you just take a picture, it does little identification magic, and it's like, it is this species. Again, this may not be the most accurate thing in the world. Sometimes they will show you a species that looks really to us nothing like what we're actually doing. There's a couple of apps, and I was supposed to look it up, but I forgot. There's an app, a couple of apps that are just terribly um, inaccurate. And I cannot remember one that I know has been called out for being very inaccurate. But again, iNaturalist is the one that I generally prefer because I can have others in the community comment on my organisms to see if this was indeed a wintergreen or the native orchid we have here or whatever other species that we're dealing with. Next slide. So with that, let's do a recap. Botany is a lot of different things. This is only a small section, a seat, if you will, in the football field of what the field of botany has to offer. There are so many interweaving vines that it is just difficult, again, to fit it within a whole hour. Howsoever, today we talked about naming conventions with binomial nomenclature. We talked about some of these Latin terms and what they mean. We practiced saying some of these terms, building our confident muscles, getting all big and strong. And we talked about identifying these planty babies. With that, I open up the floor for questions. With that, I'll open up the floor for questions. Just heard a little thunder outside. What questions do we all have? Now, again, as we are unmuting ourselves, we are remembering, let's try not to overtalk each other. It's kind of hard to do so. But if you don't want to unmute yourself, you can put your question in the chat and I or one of the lovely ladies of UNC will read it. And remember, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Okay, so we got a question from Sherry here. What do I use as a field guide that is lightweight? I currently do not use any field guides. Any of the field guides I've used in my coursework were either copies of Radford's or weeklies, like actual images, or abridged versions of those from my professors. So we would just have an abridged version for the area in which we were going to. So, for example, if I'm going to an area that is a swamp, I'm probably not going to see any desert species. So I wouldn't take key images or whatever that would lead me there. Generally, even in my work, I would take pictures of the keys, so pictures of the specific images, and keep those on my cellular device because I always had a battery charger and everything with me. So that way I could just have access to it without losing or wetting a piece of paper because I'm extremely clumsy. And even the lightest of light things get lost in my idea, in my world. So I hope I answered your question. I've also contacted a botanic garden before to help identify something. This is from Katrina Wong that I found there, which didn't have a label. So I figured something's local. Maybe the local garden can help with identification too. So definitely, if it's local, your botanical gardens, your cooperative extensions, your groups of plant enthusiasts can help you identify what these plants are. I took a beautiful tour with a young lady, and I want to say her name. I think it's Miss Oglesby. Is it Emily? Beautiful. Emily Oglesby, and she ran down plants as if she had a slide deck rolling in her head, and she named all of these species and their origins and what they were, and it was phenomenal to me. So definitely you can go to your local botanical garden, and when you see a plant that's local there, because they're going to have a native section, right? Then you can be like, hey, what is this or what is that? Sometimes the plants move. You don't see it, but at night they just lick up their roots in the dirt around them and they move from place to place. Seeds are transported. An animal walking through, us walking through may move these seeds around, and we may move these plants around. So the labels are not always going to be up to date, right? That's just something we have to give them grace for. However, they can still have the resources to be able to identify what this plant is or who it should be with its title. And Joanne put some information here in the chat. Ask the Green Gardener, a link there. Y'all be sure to copy that, where you can basically say, hey, I've seen this plant, what's up? Actually, the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, I went there not last year because we were in the middle of a Pantene commercial, but the year before, my 29th birthday, I went there for my birthday with a good friend of mine I went to high school and middle school with. And they had a similar thing. So I love that, where you can just take a picture, email, and say, hey, person, what is this? And they'll answer it and help you out. So that was dope, as they say. Are there any guys to identify plants that are like dried or dead, like winter? Winter identification, I'm just going to be real with you, it sucks. But most of these keys that I have seen, and again, these were abridged versions and other forms of Radfords and weeklies, you can generally still look at your surroundings to identify a plant in the winter. So in the winter, some species that are deciduous that drop their leaves in the winter, the leaves are all around on the base of the ground. So you can generally pick them up and assume that that leaf that you're picking up around the base of that tree is actually from the species you're trying to identify. The other thing you could do is look at the actual bark of the tree, because the bark of a birch is not the bark of a pine, and that's not the bark of a sarsaparilla. The bark looks different, and it's almost like a thumbprint sometimes. So you can look at that bark and what's called leaf scars, where the petiole would come out of the plant. and you would need like a magnet, like an eye lens or something. But you can look at that too to be able to identify those plants. In most of the, again, these 2 books I've read, they have that information there. So you can identify this plant throughout the season. So if there's no flowers, flowers are usually the most easiest way because it's like, boom, I'm here, I'm this plant. But during the winter, they hide from us, so we have to use other things. So those are the things you can use, which again will be in those guides, okay? But I personally hate winter ID because of that simple fact that there's not flowers there that make it easy. So I just remember what I did in my class. Boy, did I struggle in identifying plants, local flora, all of that jazz. And we have a link here to apps and field guides. Are there certain plants, this is from Jennifer, are there certain plant families or names that you recommend everyone be familiar with as they get started learning botany? So there are a couple that I mentioned actually during this session that are a little easy because they're a little familiar to us. A lot of people use rosemary, whether you grow it or you cook with it or you just like the smell of the oils. It may be one of your skincare, hair care products. So a lot of us are familiar with rosemary. You buy the dried seasoning from the store, right? You have food that's cooked with it. Sunflowers, a lot of us love. I personally love sunflowers, all forms. I try to, if I could, I would allegedly guerrilla garden sunflowers all over this neighborhood I live in, and they would never find out it's me, even though I've let them know I am the crazy botanist. And they would immediately know it's me, but I would lie and say it wasn't. So those are a couple of plants you can become familiar with on the house plant schema, knowing the different families of plants and what family it's in. So the actual step up above. So I think it's family, order, and then genus. Don't quote me on this. I'm a whole botanist, but sometimes I mix them up. The family will tell you for the houseplant world how the plants need to be cared for the most part. So aroids, which are your philodendrons, your alocasias, your colocasias, your pothos. I'm missing one. I hate that one. Peace lilies. And there's another one I'm missing, but I probably hate it too. Peace lilies, I can't stand. But you think of those plants in particular, they all are kind of humid loving plants. They all like a little warmth. They all can stand to have not super dry feet, but to keep a little moist in their root world. So knowing how to care for that whole family can help up your plant care game, which a lot of us need right now, especially because we're stuck in the house during the middle of a whole poodle. I do not like to use the term pandemic if I can, so I use another P word in place of it. I suggest you do too. Next question. Let's go back here to the chat. Plant families and plant names, especially as you're all are typing in the chat, the mints, which are Laminaceae, you can, and I'm sure that's a cool word people can spell, mints, things like that. But what I usually suggest is you learn the plants that you know and you are accustomed to. So a lot of these plants that I grow and I deal with and I love, like the mints, like the herbs, like the house plants, I've gotten into because I have an attachment to them. If I have an attachment to them, then I can actually keep them in my head. Now, again, as a whole botanist, I've had to learn some words and terms and phrases that I rarely, if ever, use. They weren't really that interesting to me. However, when you have an attachment and a connection, it sticks in your memory longer. Boop, boop, boop. Any suggestions for class to sign up for this that you all are offering that would be a good intro for? Question mark? I feel like that question isn't finished. Let me read that again. Any suggestions for a class to sign up for after this that you all are offering that this would be a good intro for? There we go. I can't read. So I do not know the class arrangement. They've told me, but I think this would be something better suited for, unless you're asking for like educational class, like a whole coursework over a semester. If you're asking for UNC classes, I'll let Joanna answer.
Well, I just posted in the chat, what might you like Derek to teach next as a follow-up to this? So there's one question.
How about it?
We also
Y'all know
have,
I'll come back.
If you're interested in food plants, Bree Arthur is teaching some classes for us upcoming. She has a spring veggie garden class that may be of interest in foodscaping with native plants. We have a tree class this weekend, about 12 tips for taking care of trees. So that's another one that may be a great follow-up. And let me think about it, and we can follow up with in a follow-up email and send you some links to some other classes. So, but I am interested to know if you might like Derek to teach next.
Please have Derek teach again, because I can go deeper. We can talk about different things in physiology. We can talk about different things in ethnobotany. That's my Jimmy Jam. Telling how these plants have controlled us and how we've controlled these plants. That is phenomenal. Typing while listening is hard. You are right about that. Do it. Go deeper. I love it. What other questions y'all got for me? I know y'all have burning questions. You've got a whole botanist sitting here in front of you. How often do y'all get to meet a real living botanist actually working in the field, doing botany and everything? How often do y'all, all of these topics you just mentioned would be good. How about that, Sheila? How about it? So it is 7:33. I'm hoping we have any other questions. Again, I'm gonna wait another little bit. I know we're typing. I appreciate you being here today. And I'm just gonna wait another couple of seconds to see what happens before we just wrap up. Making sure I'm not skipping anybody in the chat.
All right, I've got a question for you.
Okay, go for it.
All right, I am interested in learning more about plant names, and I think learning the Latin helps. I think that makes it easier for me. Do you have any good resources on learning plant names, learning that breakdown, that etymology of the words?
So resources for that. Now, to be honest, some of these I learned literally while going through school. I looked for really dependable, this is the real big term, dependable resources, because I don't know if the international people that control the names and do the binomial nomenclature, if they just don't care. But I cannot, on the life of me, find out the origins and the name, like a dictionary for these species. And then when I've tried to search for actual like breakdowns, which I've seen before in books and texts we've had at state, I'm like, how did I do this before? And I'm like, I had to look. I remember just literally having to Google these things at home because I worked and went to school. So I had to Google these things at home and look up what these different terms mean. So sometimes it's literally a Google search, or if you use Bing, to each his own, to say, okay, what does this term mean? And what does it come from? Because, for example, some plants may be named Michowii, named for a botanist, Michaud, and they put two eyes on the end, and they were like, fancy. And that's literally what it's named for. So it's literally sometimes me going through a Wikipedia profile, looking at these names, following the links on the bottom, and going down a botanical rabbit hole to not just Wonderland, but etymology land, which is like Wonderland if it was at the Dollar Tree. And once you get there to the Dollar Tree Wonderland, the Wonderland your parents tell you have at home, you're like, this is not Wonderland. I wanted that Wonderland. And they go, we got Wonderland at home. Once you get there, it's literally just saying, okay, let me see what people say. Like the pepper thing, for example. I was like, well, how do y'all not know what it means? But it's lost in time. Things happen. They didn't have, a Facebook Live message to say why we named this plant this. So definitely deep research on the internet. There may be botanical books and dictionaries that are not online, but I'm hoping as we get bigger into this future world of technology, that they will begin to really put more of these resources available online for quick searching. So that is really the best way. Even some of the words I've had to look up before, certain terms and specific epithets, like somebody got this Latin phrase that meant like a reindeer's fur. So it's kind of like velveteen because the plant was a little furry. And I'm like, who would even know that? Who even uses? So it's a term that's not even, the English form of it isn't even used. I can't even remember right now. It starts with like a V for like reindeer fur or something. And it's like, great, that's awesome. people using old words that are not in the English language anymore, accurately used by people of my technology. There's no emoji for that. So looking up things in a deep way is how it was worked for me. Again, I'm sure books out there because they've written this down, but they just don't have this accessible online, and I don't know why.
Because you haven't created it yet for us.
You know what? You're right, and I can't beat you when you're right. I love it. I'm here for all of it. Okay, let me see. What's my favorite plant fact? My favorite plant fact. I throw a lot of them up. Um, my favorite plant fact I've been mentioning recently is because I run into on some of these apps a lot of people who believe that plants are magical and not more so than medicinal. And plants can be both. Howsoever, there's often these health crazes that come out where someone's like, you can eat this sea kelp and you can get a million nutrients and lose weight and grow back arms and your cable will be free and Netflix won't ask you if this is really your password for their somebody else's account, and mystically all your nostalgia will come back from the 90s and 80s and 70s and possibly the 30s, and it'll just do everything. Buy it now. And when I run into people, I'm like, well, hey, plants don't really work that way. They get very upset and they start spouting out stuff about genetically modified organisms. How, whatever your views are on that, that is up to you. Howsoever, I ran into people who said it's not natural, which I'm like, I agree, because we're not naturally doing it. But 8,000 years ago, sweet potatoes were genetically modified in nature. And unless Doc and Marty McFly went back and did that, this happened all by itself in nature, 8,000 years. So the same process that we eventually discovered and learned up on was already a thing back in the day. So that is one of my favorite plant facts. I got a lot of them, but that is one of them. What do I recommend for identifying pests and problems? I know I mentioned these apps for plant identification, but you freak yourself out by thinking every piece of dirt is a bug and that every dried leaf is a fungus. So here's what I tell these people, because there's a lot of you all who want to do the outdoor world. And again, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. So I'll see people, I'll read about people who are like, hey, I got all these spiders outside. What do I need to do? Somebody's like, well, I just take a bunch of Raid and I spray all the spiders. And I'm like, okay, but then I just seen you talking about how you have so many insects now, and you're using all of these different chemicals to try to kill the inside to make the inside sanitary, or the outside sanitary, I should say. So you're killing spiders and bugs and crickets and shooing away wasps and bees. And you're like, I wonder why my garden looks terrible. Or people who use insecticides to get rid of fungus. I've literally seen this. And I was like, no, don't do that. What are you doing? And they're like, yeah, it works for me. And I'm like, well, that's not even for that. What are you saying? It says insecticide. And the botanist in me hollers at people. He really does, but I don't let that guy out. Because he goes there and he's like, what are you doing? Please stop it. Because everyone's talking and they sound like they're intelligent, but they don't have the answer. So to identify pests, the first thing you can do is iNaturalist, again, can identify, like if you're looking at an insect or something, it can tell you what that insect is. If it's an aphid, a spider mite, a mealybug, a carpenter bee, beetle, or whatever, cockroach, whatever it is, it can tell you what it is. Number two, if you are going into this planting world, you have to accept that at some point in your world of botanicalism, you are going to run into some sort of insect. That's just going to happen. I cannot stand a roach. I don't like most insects, to be honest. I was outside doing a live presentation one day, and here's the funny thing about cockroaches. They love pots that haven't been touched in a while, and they're the color almost to the naked eye of your dirt. So you don't see them until they're scurrying and running around. And I jumped and freaked back. I have the camera behind me. I knocked the camera over. I'm like, everything is falling over. Everything. And this is back before I really got things as smart as I have them now. So wires were tripping. I tripped. I clicked the button. There was a lot of things happening. Y'all ever see any episode of Family Matters where Steve Urkel does some grandiose accident and things are popping off left and right? That was me. I broke 2 pots just by kicking them to back up. Okay. These pots have been dropped and I just barely tapped with my foot. They shattered. I was so disappointed. However, it happens. I just have to keep moving. I don't like lizards. I had to keep it moving. Instagram last year, I talked about my birdie baby mama, I called it, and how I had this bird who decided that she was going to take roost in my patio, that she was going to live here forever and have as many eggs as she wanted to, because now I'm hers and she's mine. But she really has this other man who's not providing a place to live because she's living on my stoop. Why? Anywho, it happens. So we just have to learn to become more comfortable with them. Again, I still have fears of cockroaches, but I've learned to become more comfortable with them being outside or inside. I've had one inside these pots. Inside, you don't touch your pots in a while. They just get in one day, you don't notice. They just sit in there. They come out when you ain't looking, and then you go through your dirt one day, and you have to throw all that dirt outside with a bunch of hot water because it's 30 degrees outside, and you're freaking out because it's 9 o'clock at night, and you had a long, hard week at work, and you now have a cockroach that was trying to crawl all over your leg and arm. I'm not saying this from personal experience, but that is what I suggest. Just become more comfortable. I'm not telling you to put them on your face, but become more comfortable. Guerrilla sunflower gardening class. I actually have tried to do some guerrilla sunflower gardening legally on the property owned by Durham Cooperative Extension. They never came up. We ended up having a very dry summer, and sunflowers don't really like to be transplanted, from what I hear. So that didn't work out. A lot of work for nothing, but it's okay. I did get a microscope, and I'm like, okay, now it's a bigger bug fish. So maybe look, bugs are everywhere. So even in your soil, like indoors, and I can't show you here because I don't have anything that has them crawling on it, and I don't think I can get a good zoom in. But even in your indoor plants, when you look hard enough, you can see small little insects. You have fungus gnats that will come and bother you during the summer months, or if you water your plants heavily. If you are dealing outside, you have a lot of different things that can come up with you, but just learn to love those insects. They're part of this environment and this ecosystem. And granted, again, I will spray to try to keep squash bugs away from my babies and to keep them from coming in here, those darn Asian beetles. And again, the cockroaches that just love to come in here, wood roaches want to come and just be like, hey, I'm on your ceiling. If they're in here, they're dead to me. But outdoors, I try to shoo them away as best as I can because we need them, especially our bees and our wasps, because some of these things you may use to keep the insects away outdoors can negatively impact our bees. And if all these bees die, we ain't that far behind. We're not that far behind. Why no singing flowers to tell us what's what? I wish they would. I wish that the fungi and the flowers and the lichens would just be like some Fantasia movie singing to us who they are, or that if you looked at them hard enough and zoomed in, it will just have its name written in cursive. So that way, those under my generation won't be able to read it. But unfortunately, that's not it. Maybe there are songs that can help us do it. Do I hand pollinate any of my plants? Occasionally. It depends. Tomatoes, I don't really hand pollinate, but I do shake them. A good shake can help your tomatoes get a nice pollination going. I've done it with sunflowers where I'm trying to kind of cross different varieties because I love sunflowers. And I've attempted to do it with Asiatic lilies last year. So whether you have a Q-tip or a paintbrush or even just your little finger, you get that pollen up there and you rub it across that anthers. It's a beautiful thing. So I have done it for those. I'm trying to think, when is the last time I've really hand pollinated? That was last year, but typically I don't. I usually try to make my place more inviting to the pollinators so they can come through. So hummingbirds and bees and wasps. I love wasps, everybody. I used to have a fear, but wasps are dope. I named them all M names just because. So Megan, Martha, Marlena, Michelle. I like to give them old, out of use names like Margot. And they're my buddies. They're my buddies. They're my pals. What's the most important role we can play to not lose our plant species? We could stop building freaking storage unit centers and gas stations every which way but loose. Do y'all know how sick? Now you've got me started. Do you know how sick I get of driving by a beautiful forest and then one day seeing these cancerous construction companies. And granted, they're doing what they're paid to do. I'm not coming against them too much, but they're coming here and they're ripping the trees out and they're ripping the dirt out and they're ripping everything out for us to store stuff in another storage place that you can lock something away in and never see it again and just pay money for these people now have a reality TV show, another Storage Wars, where they can come to what was once a nice, beautiful lush forest, a nice, beautiful wooded area, a nice swamp. I love swamps. I hope y'all do. And it's just gone. And we can never put that back. We can never put a control undo up there and take it back. It's gone and lost forever for something that I just feel like we don't need. Another high rise, another apartment. Who needs to live in these apartments? Who is moving here? How many people are really on this earth? Those are questions I have. But we can take an active role in trying to preserve the wooded and wild areas that we may have under our control or purview. We can go to grow natives, like Lauren mentioned earlier. Hey, I'm growing all of these natives. I try to grow some natives. And that way, if nothing else, we can keep the species alive again in the areas that we control. Even if you are on a patio, you can grow echinaceas and some of these native sunflowers and other phenomenal species that just need a little spotlight. I always think of being an eco-terrorist and just going after these people that are going and doing stuff. But since I have a 9 to 5, I can't. I don't suggest you do that either. But we can, if you have the legal authority or whatever, go through those channels and try to show people the importance of the land. And this is why I do what I do. The land is important. There's not any more made. This isn't some, world building app where we can just grow more earth real quick. Again, I can't rewind time and put the trees and the hydrology of that area back to where it was. I can't even uproot what was there and just return it back to what it was. We could try, but it'll never be exactly what it was. So we can help to share for others to appreciate this land, and maybe through the power of knowledge, one day we'll stop taking it all away. You can also support the local community gardens that are keeping these areas, granted manicured, but generally some of them may be surrounded by wooded areas that they are in control of. And you can support your land conserving organizations like Triangle Land Conservancy. They are a great organization. I know some of their board members, and they help. It's tlcconservancy.org, I think. And you can go and support them and help them out. Locally, though, if you're also trying to support another area or another organization that is about the land, farming and community gardening and stuff, you can also support Briggs Community Gardens, Briggs Avenue Community Garden, or Urban Community Agronomics. And that website I know by heart because I used to be on that board is ucan.today. And that is a Black founded nonprofit. This is the last 10 minutes. As you type your last questions, I will say this. Thank you, number one, for being here today. I appreciate you taking your time and putting a place and a space for these plants. Botany is a big world. Find your way in it and learn what you can. If you do have time during this pandemonium that we're in, you can look up Michael Pollan's The Botany of Desire. It's a documentary and a book. The documentary you can watch and see some great stuff on him talking about ethnobotany of different plants and how they've moved around and evolved and stuff like that due to us and our interactions and stuff like that. You can also look up, which I am going to eventually sit down and watch one day, The Secret Life of Plants, which was a documentary that came out in the 70s, I believe. And it's a beautiful album also that was written for the documentary by Stevie Wonder. They had to describe each scene to him in vivid detail because Sir Stevie Wonder is blind. And he wrote a beautiful album that is so planty. So whenever you're sitting down and you're being planty, The Secret Life of Plants, play that album. listen to it and let those plants overtake you. Again, I appreciate you all for being here. I appreciate Botanical Gardens for having me here. I love them, and I hope to be able to work with you all again in the future. If y'all have any other questions for me after this, you can contact me at my email or my social media, The Chocolate Botanist at Instagram. My email is very much so better. And with that, I have nothing else to say.